Good evening, my name is Camden and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are not aware, November has officially been named Native American Heritage Month back in 1990, and in fact the day that this video will be going live is Native American Heritage Day. So similar to what I did last month during Hispanic Heritage Month, I wanted to make a video celebrating Native American heritage. So I have some books from Indigenous authors here that I'm hoping to read this week, and I'll also be throwing in some other content that kind of circles around Indigenous culture. Obviously, I am very white, so my perspective is not an important perspective when it comes to this. Please seek out some Indigenous creators if you can, and know that Native American culture is not one lump. It is a very diverse. Each tribe has its own history, its own storytelling, its own recipes, its own backgrounds, its own experiences. They are all very different. But anyway, I wanted to show you the books that I'm going to be reading this week. I'm going to be trying to get to 3, which might be a little ambitious because every video I've put out so far, I've only read 2 books. The first one I have is Elatsoe. This cover is absolutely stunning. This book is by Darcie Little Badger, and she is an Apache woman, and this book is about a girl, our main character Elatsoe, and she sees the ghosts of dead animals. And this book centers around a mystery. Her cousin has been murdered, and I believe she is using her gift of being able to communicate with the ghosts of animals to try and solve who did it. The next book I have is Winter Counts. This is by David Heska, Wanbli, Weiden. I definitely should have looked up how to pronounce the authors' names before this. I am so sorry. This author is from the Lakota Nation. Plotline of this book is a little bit confusing to me when I read it. It sounds like our main character is an enforcer on a local reservation. It sounds like he's kind of like a vigilante. Like he delivers the justice that like natives can't get in the justice system, like through the legal system. And then something happens where drugs start being brought onto the reservation and destroying people's lives, obviously, and he's trying to solve the mystery of who is like trying to infiltrate the reservation and like destroy these people's lives. So this one looks really interesting. And then the last book that I have that I really want to read is not a book that I own physically at this time. Let me pull it up on my Scribd app here. And this one is The Only Good Indian. Oh, can you focus? Can you focus? This one is The Only Good Indians by, hello? Stephen Graham Jones. And he is a Blackfoot native. It's really interesting. It follows a main character named Lewis, and throughout the beginning of the book he's kind of referencing this notorious, like infamous elk hunt that he and 3 of his friends went on years ago, and something went like horribly awry on this hunt. And I haven't yet figured out what that is because he hasn't fully indulged, but it sounds like something went wrong with one of the elk who he attempted to kill, and he feels that elk is still like haunting him and is still alive and like turned into a monster or something like that. So zombie elk sounds like a fun time to me. But anyway, yeah, I'm super excited for all of these books. I'm really excited to get into this video. I think it's gonna be a good one, and please stick around. Today I'm going to be making some Three Sisters soup, which is a Native American dish that a lot of different tribes have their own take on. It also has a story that accompanies it surrounding the 3 sisters who are representative of the 3 most important crops that natives have grown throughout the years. One of them represents beans, one of them represents corn, and the other one represents squash. I'll read that for you now. I'll leave the links to both the recipe and the story in the description box if you guys want to check it out for yourselves. Without further ado, here's the story of the legend of the 3 sisters. There are several legends surrounding the three sisters. Indeed, almost every American Indian nation seems to have its own. The Cherokee legend involves three women who helped each other stay fed, hydrated, and strong on the Trail of Tears, a lesson that the Cherokee used in planting their crops when they arrived in the Oklahoma Territory. Another legend describes three sisters who bickered constantly until their mother gave them each an egg cooked in a different way and showed the sisters that, although the textures of the egg were different, they were all still eggs. This is one version of the Haudenosaunee legend of the three sisters. Very long ago, there were three sisters who lived in a field. The youngest was so small she could not yet walk. She crawled along the ground, dressed in green. The middle sister wore a bright yellow dress and darted back and forth across the field. The eldest sister stood tall and straight and her body bent in the wind. She had long yellow hair and wore a green shawl. The three sisters loved one another very much and could not imagine living without the others. One day, a little Indian boy came to the field. He was very handsome and knew the ways of the land. He could talk to the birds and the animals and was straight and fearless. The three sisters were very interested in this boy, and as they watched him use his stone knife to carve a bowl or hunt with his bow and arrow. Late in the summer of the boy's first visit to the field, the youngest of the sisters disappeared. She was the one who could only creep along the ground. She could not even stand unless there was a stick that she could cling to. But she was gone, and the other two sisters mourned her until the fall. The Indian boy returned to the field to gather reeds that grew at the edge of the small stream. He used the reeds to make arrow shafts. The two remaining sisters watched him again, fascinated. That night, the second sister disappeared, the one who was always wandering hither and yon. Now there was only one sister left, the tall and straight sister. She did not bow her head in sorrow, though she mourned deeply, and thought she could not live in the field alone without her sisters. As the days grew shorter and colder, her green shawl began to lose its color, and her hair became dry and tangled. Night and day she sighed for her sisters, but her voice was low like the wind, and no one heard her. One day in the harvest season, the little Indian boy heard the third sister crying, and he felt sorry for her. He took her in his arms and carried her to his home, and there a delightful surprise waited her. Her sisters were there in the lodge, safe and very glad to be reunited. They explained that they had been curious about the little Indian boy and had followed him home, and they had decided to stay because winter was coming and his home was warm and comfortable. The sisters also were making themselves useful to the boy and his family. The youngest, now all grown up, kept the dinner pot full, while the second sister, still in her yellow dress, dried herself on the shelf so she could fill the dinner pot later in the winter. The eldest sister was so pleased to be with her sisters again and so impressed with the help they gave the boy that she too began drying herself so the family would have a meal to use as winter went on. And from that day to this, the three sisters were never separated again. I can't believe we're having this beautiful weather in the middle of November. Like, it's never this nice in November here. I don't have a lot of time because I'm supposed to be leaving soon, so I gotta make this update snappy, but I do have a reading update for you guys. I finished The Only Good Indians last night, and I'm gonna say that this one is about a 3-star for me. I listened to it on audiobook, and I reached a point in the book where it felt like everything had been wrapped up in a nice little package, and we were, you know, kind of putting the final touches on the story and just finalizing everything. So I looked down at my phone to see how much time was left and like how many chapters, and there were 2 hours left in the book. And I was just like baffled, and I really didn't feel like any of that 2 hours was like totally necessary. I mean, I was expecting maybe like 20-25 minutes left. Like, the climax had happened and it just felt like everything needed to be like wrapped up from there. But another action sequence ensued, and I wasn't totally a fan of the direction that it took. Kind of felt like it was unnecessary and just dragged out the story a little bit too much. It's going to be difficult for me to kind of describe what this book is about. For the majority of the book, you're supposed to be questioning whether what's happening is real or whether it's paranoia, and I don't want to give away which of those it ends up being. But what I will tell you is that we're following these 4 characters who, like 20 years ago, I believe, went on this kind of infamous elk hunt, and they went onto Forbidden Land. Basically, they've all kind of been fighting some demons since then. One of the characters in particular, Lewis, who we follow throughout the majority of the book, is really like haunted by the actions that he took on that day, and it kind of is driving him a little bit mad. We're watching kind of his mental deterioration over like the weeks and months, and just trying to figure out if he's like schizophrenic or if there really is this like elk monster out to get him. It's a very interesting book. I would say that I liked it, but I did feel it was like a little bit underdeveloped, and kind of the way we follow the characters is a little strange. Like, Lewis takes up the vast majority of the book, and then there's one character who only comes in for like, 5 pages, and then there's another other characters that come in here and there throughout the book a little bit, and then take up like the last 100 pages or so. So the division of like who starred in this book was a little bit strange, but overall I did like it, and I would definitely read from this author again. I think he has a very haunting writing style and a very interesting writing style, and I definitely want to pick up more of his books. I know he released one this year called My Heart is a Chainsaw. The other reading update is that I am about 60% of the way through Winter Counts, so I should have some final thoughts for you on that one soon. If not, when I have a little more time, I'll come and give you a reading update on that one. So anyway, I will see you guys soon. Good morning. I have a reading update for you. It's so good. Do you like my mushroom butt cup? My best friend got it for me for Christmas. I finished Winter Counts by... what is that guy's name?
Between the Covers. David Heska Wanbli Weiden.
David Heska Wanbli Weiden. This one is more of like kind of a mystery / legal thriller. It follows our main character, Virgil Wounded Horse, who is like kind of like an enforcer at his reservation. Basically, whenever there is like a violent crime, it has to be picked up by the federal courts, and a lot of them won't bother to prosecute, so people will hire Virgil to kind of enforce justice on their behalf for them. So like he talks about throughout the book, there are some cases where there's been like a small child who's been assaulted, and he'll be the one who kind of goes to their rapists and beats the crap out of them and, you know, warns them off of ever approaching that child again. And that's kind of how justice gets handled on the reservation. Our main character Virgil gets approached by a local councilman who is running for office and lets him know that someone is bringing heroin onto the reservation, and whoever that is, this councilman really wants it to be taken care of behind the scenes before his election happens, so that there's not a ton of like heroin arrests and heroin overdoses and stuff like that right before like an election, you know, year for him. So Virgil decides to, you know, work with this guy and see if he can figure out who is smuggling in this heroin. Then quickly after he agrees to this, things kind of get a lot more personal for him when his nephew actually ends up overdosing on heroin, and he is trying to figure out who it was that sold it to his nephew and like all this stuff. For the most part, I really did enjoy Virgil as our main character. I think he kind of had like a strong DILF vibe of like, he's just kind of a single man raising his nephew after his sister died, and I really enjoyed especially like his relationship with his nephew and watching them like interact, and him, you know, trying to make parenting decisions when he's not, you know, strictly a parent, but he's, you know, looked after his nephew for a better part of his life. Overall, I think the plot was a little bit predictable, and where the book ended up going was a little bit predictable as well. And some of the plot points were just a little convenient, a little too convenient for my liking. But that's just kind of par for the course, I think, in thrillers like this, where you're like a regular person trying to solve a crime. So can't really fault it for that too much. I think overall I would probably give this book also a 3-star. Okay, so that is the update, and now I am working my way through Elatsoe right now. But there is a reason that I'm in front of my computer right now, and it's not just the beautiful lighting. I found out about this website through a TikToker that I follow who is native, and in one of his TikToks he was encouraging people to use this website and look up whose land you are on. And I thought this would be interesting to do on camera, so that maybe can inspire you guys to take a look as well. So I'm gonna pull this up. I'll put on screen a screen recording so you can see what I'm doing here. Okay, so the website is native-land.ca. Native-land disclaimer. Go to map. Okay. Okay, so let's see. I am in, this right here, I think is the line, is like the border of New Hampshire. At least it looks like it a lot. But New Hampshire is on Wabanaki or Abenaki land, and then it looks like we also have some Pennacook land. Let's see if I can find some of the ones that are like in the books that I'm reading right now. So we have Apache. Nope. Ooh. Too close. This one is specifically Leapin' Apache. Oh, okay. Where am I looking? You zoomed in and I can't see where you brought me. I'm good at geography, but I can't quite tell where this is. It looks like it's like Arizona or maybe Texas. Okay. Who else did we have? We had the Blackfoot In the book, they're set in like South Dakota. So wow, so this whole area is Blackfoot territory. That is insane. That's a lot of land. So yeah, this one definitely has, I think probably around like here is where South Dakota would be. Okay, and then the last one, what tribe were they? The Blackfoot Tribe was in the Only Good Indians, and the Lipan Apaches are in Elatsoe. I'm trying to remember who was in Winter Counts. Oh, it's the Lakota. Okay. Well, that didn't help. They also called themselves the Sioux in the book, but I know that's a French term for them. Let me see if I can find Google. But yeah, so I am on Wabanaki land, and the books that I'm reading are set in Texas, South Dakota, and I believe Nebraska. I can't find the Lakota tribe on here. I'm sure maybe it's like broken down into more specific names or something. I'm sure they're here. I'm just not educated enough to know. So anyway, just wanted to show you guys this. Again, it's native-land.ca if you want to check it out yourself and figure out whose land you are on. And then you can do, you know, some research as well and try and learn more about where you are living and whose land it's on. So anyway, I'm gonna keep on keeping on with Elatsoe, and once I have an update for you guys, I will be back to film it. Good morning. I am so sorry to be always in a rush in this vlog, but I am about to embark on a 12-hour train ride to visit my cousin in Virginia. But I wanted to give you a quick update before I do. I finished Elatsoe by Darcie Little Badger. Excellent. 5 stars. This book gave me everything I wanted it to give me and more, and I am now its #1 fan. This book follows our main character Elatsoe, or Ellie, as she is trying to solve the mystery of her cousin's murder, who everyone else has deemed an accident, but she has an edge on them because she communicates with ghosts, and her cousin's ghost comes to her before he moves on to the afterlife, and he lets her know the name of his killer and that he's been murdered. So her and her posse of family and friends are looking into this case with her and trying to solve this and gather enough evidence that they can show it to police and be believed. So this book is just honestly excellent. We have a lot of mythical creatures in here with their own kind of unique lore that Darcie Little Badger has written for them. We've got vampires, we've got fae, we've got, you know, ghosts. I really, really enjoyed the elements that she decided to add to these you know, magical creature's backstory. The biggest thing that I loved in this book was the characters. I felt like Elatsoe was very brave, very astute, very endearing character to follow. And not only her, but every one of our side characters, every one of the family members was also just like a pleasure to read about. They all had distinct personalities. They were all very well-rounded. They were all unique, but very supportive of her. And that's something that you don't always get in like YA fantasies like this, especially with like a mystery element, and she has a supernatural power. But her whole family wholeheartedly believed in her and her gift, and they were like, well, if that's what you say, then it must be true. We totally support you, and we'll like figure this out with you. And that was chef's kiss. I love a supportive family, and we don't have enough of them in YA. Usually they're just like not even in the picture for the whole time, and you're like, are you taking care of your kids? Doesn't seem like it. Another thing that I really loved, and I feel like is a little unique to this book, is that Darcie Little Badger took a lot of time to just kind of show these moments of like humor and show these moments of compassion and like stop for like a story and things that were not necessarily had anything to do with the plot, but just as a reader made you feel more connected to the characters, made you feel more connected to the story. And that is always great. Like, it's just kind of like a little side conversation or a side adventure or a side joke that just made it feel that much more wholesome and well-rounded without like having to directly further the plot. I think authors often shy away from this because it seems extraneous, but in all honesty, like, it adds so much color and depth to the book. So that is another thing that I loved. I'm sure there's more. I'm sure I'm forgetting things that I wanted to say about this book. But like I said, I'm in a rush. So I'm going to close this out now. I really don't want to be saying any of this in a rush. But there are 3 things that I want to bring to your attention. This YouTube series, I want to be more than just reading books. I also want to make sure I am doing my part to bring some awareness to some issues that need your attention. I will leave links to educate yourself or to donate to charities in the description box below. I would really thank you to take some time and look at those. Reading from Indigenous authors, very important, very needed. Listening to these people's voices, very important, very needed. Following content creators who are Indigenous, whether that's to the Americas or Australia or wherever else in the world that Indigenous voices are suppressed, very, very important. 3 issues that I want to spotlight in this video. We have the ongoing recovery of children's bodies at reservation schools. This is unbelievably important. People are finally being reunited with loved ones who they know have been missing 50, 60 years, and it's being covered up by our government. So please look into this, educate yourself, find some causes that you can donate to help this recovery of these children and bring them home to their loved ones who have been waiting for answers for far too long. In a related note, missing and murdered Indigenous women, men as well, but particularly women, are highly targeted in this country. They go missing and are murdered at a rate so great compared to the population size in our country. That is super, super important. Again, I'll leave links down below. And the last thing I want to talk about is how the coronavirus has affected natives and native reservations. It's been bad. It's been bad for everybody, but especially these minority groups have been heavily impacted, and they rely on government funding. So again, education links down below, places to donate. Please check them out. Have a good day. I will see you next Friday.